Welcome to Northwest Tech Show. I'm Dave Duncan, and this is a show where we talk about technology and how a better understanding of it can help you have better outcomes at home, at work, and in your civic engagements. We're going to kick things off, as we like to do, with a Creative Commons clip from the good folks at Twit TV.
This is Twit.
The Australian software company Atlassian offers something called Confluence, which is a web-based corporate wiki written quite a while ago, 18 years ago, back in 2004 in Java. It's
and
one
we
of
use
Atlassian's,
it, actually, and have for years.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's one of Atlassian's more popular products. It's packaged as a standalone turnkey that includes a built-in Tomcat web server, and the database is HSQL DB, which is also a Java-based database, so it makes sense that that's what it would choose, although other databases can be used with Confluence. It's modern collaborative software. It's used to help teams collaborate and share knowledge. In a corporate setting, it's used, for example, to capture project requirements, assign tasks to specific users, and manage one or more calendars. It's typically used on-premise in all over the place, in both in corporate, enterprise, and government environments. So.
And now I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Is there a...
That was the good news.
Yeah.
We're talking about it today because it appears to have recently come to the attention of ever-prolific attackers who, based on the troubles it's been having recently, it's come to their attention because it's been, vulnerabilities have been surfacing. And unfortunately, as with any product that was first written 18 years ago, before today's hyper-attack-aware climate existed, some of its coding practices from back then appear to be being turned into vulnerabilities. Now, although Confluence has recently suffered, as I said, from a series of troubles, it popped up again just last week due to a very serious problem with the installation of, believe it or not, default hard-coded credentials. As we know, anytime you hear that a problem has been created by the discovery of the default hard-coded credentials, meaning a username and password with privileges no one should have, by default being part of an installation, it's difficult to chalk that up to anything other than some previous very bad decision. In this instance, the trouble arises from the installation of an app called Questions for Confluence. So it's not the core Confluence server itself, it's an add-on app. It's often installed on Confluence Server and Data Center on-premises instances because it allows employees to ask questions and receive answers from a company's various internal departments. The installation of this Questions for Confluence app creates a user named, the user's name is Disabled System User, with the username Disabled System User and the email of don't delete this user at email.com. So, a fake email placeholder, but Disabled System User as the name of the account and the name of the user. And unfortunately, contrary to the name given to the account, it's not at all disabled, although it is indeed a system user. Atlassian released a patch that disables this built-in hard-coded account 13 days ago on July 20th. However, Confluence Server admins did not have much time to install Atlassian's fix because, through no fault of Atlassian's, the system account username and credentials for this account were posted the next day to Twitter by someone using the handle annoyed researcher.
Oh.
Okay. I don't know the backstory for that, but it's uncool, right, to do that under any circumstances. I don't care how annoyed somebody is. That's just not the way it's done. In fact, I would argue you cannot call yourself a researcher, no matter how annoyed you may be, if you're, posting credentials for a just released flaw that no one will have had time to fix.
You have to do responsible disclosure. That's just everybody has to do that. Yeah.
So as things go these days, it didn't take the bad guys long to put annoyed researchers' information to nefarious use. The cybersecurity firms, both of them, Gray Noise and Rapid7, both reported seeing immediate and continuing exploitation of this. I guess we'll call it a vulnerability, although it's hard to chalk up, hard-coded credentials. No, I guess it is a vulnerability. It's not like they broadcasted it, but still shouldn't be done. It's the kind of thing you do by policy rather than by mistake. I guess that's the problem I'm having. Anyway, within days of the release of the patch, it was being used in attacks. CISA has stepped up and urged Confluence server owners to check to see if the vulnerable app has been installed on their servers, and if so, to install Atlassian's past patches. And Atlassian noted that disabling the app due to the nature of the problem doesn't fix the issue, because it's the app's installation that created the problem by creating this instantiation of this non-disabled disabled user. So Confluence server owners must either install the security fixes or manually disable that hard-coded disabled system user account, which was created by this Questions for Confluence app. So anyway, because this thing, I've been seeing Confluence problems pass by, and they just haven't risen to the level of bringing them to our listeners' attention. But this one really seemed like it was important enough that, you just want to make sure that if you're using this thing, that you've responded to Atlassian's security fix and or killed or disabled that user. And in fact, Kevin Beaumont, the true security researcher who tweets as Gossie the dog, he said, "I would recommend Confluence be placed behind a VPN or reverse proxy." And he says, for example, Azure App Proxy. He says, requiring authentication. He said, it's simply too historically vulnerable to leave online. You're a sitting duck, was his tweet. And, it's difficult to argue with Kevin's logic. Everyone knows that I think this should be standard practice now for all publicly exposed services. The rule would be, don't publicly expose anything that doesn't utterly and absolutely, by definition, need to be publicly exposed. So what does? Web servers obviously need to be publicly exposed by definition. So does email and probably DNS, although I even managed to not have my DNS publicly exposed. I use level 3's big iron DNS servers as masters as slaves to my master. So the DNS, the only DNS that my system allows is zone transfers from my two designated name servers for grc.com, which are level 3 monster DNS servers. And who knows, they're probably, virtualized and distributed and, not even actual single machines anymore. But anyway, so I guess the point is, it is possible to absolutely protect all of an enterprise's stuff by by putting them behind, and this is what Kevin is talking about, an additional layer of authentication. Put them behind a VPN, put them behind some additional boundary that requires authentication, and only then are you able to get to it, or use an overlay network, and stick them on an overlay network so that people have to authenticate to that in order to get there. But just don't have them as a public IP and port that Shodan is going to index so that the bad guys can jump on whatever it is the instant a problem is found. I mean, that's the model today. So the only sane response to today's reality is, no matter what it is, no matter how secure you think it is, give it additional protection. It has to be the way we roll. And I've been following my own advice from before we started talking about this.
And you're listening to Northwest Tech Show on KMUZ. That was a Creative Commons clip by the good folks at twit.tv. That was Security Now 882 Atlassian Confluence exploit. So, yeah, I mean, this is, a bit of software from 2004 combined with a plugin that, extends its power, but also made a really dumb move on how to integrate with the package. So, presumably, this questions for Confluence needs to interact with the underlying wiki, and to do that, it created itself a high-level account and used hard-coded passwords to use that account. So at the very least, at installation, it should have generated a random password for that account when it was creating it. So, I mean, it's creating the account specifically for its own use. So it's the only one that really needs to know the account. So if it randomly generated something and created it that way and, stored locally somehow how to use it, I guess that would be a thing. And that's the sort of thing that happens when people just want something to work. They're rushing it out the door and it's like, okay, all right, it works now, so I'm finished. And just kind of, look to the side and go, oh, hope no one notices that. And the use of a wiki is pretty amazing. I guess I'd like to kind of just recap what is a wiki. And a wiki is kind of a implementation of the original vision of the internet, which was that the sites would be readable and writable. So it's a simplified way of creating web pages that just use ordinary text to define all the effects that are necessary. So if you want to bold something, maybe you just put a couple of asterisks around it, or underline it. You put a couple of underline characters before and after it. And if you want to create a link to another page and create that page, you use what's called camel case. You have two or more words that are capitalized at the beginning of the words, and then the spaces are removed. So if you wanted to have make a new page, you're editing a page for, say, list of modifications to Project X. This is a page you're doing. And you might say, okay, well, I'm going to create a sub page called November Changes. And so I'm just going to write November Changes and and capitalize each word and take the space out. And now when that word is displayed, it will, kind of be lit up like a normal link is in a web page, so it's like, oh, click here, and it will go to a new page called November Changes, and that page starts out blank, and you click edit if you're logged into this thing, and it says, okay, start typing, and you can make that page. So it's a very simplified way of creating lots of information in a kind of a low friction way. And there's a little bit of a learning curve to making this, what they call wiki markdown. But it's not too bad, because you hit edit and you see the source the way other people typed it. All of a sudden it goes from the version with the bolds and the underlines and the links and stuff like that to actually, oh, here's just asterisks around something, or here's just two words bumped together, and it's like, oh, okay, you can just look at by example. Here's how these specialized, like headers and bullet points and all this stuff, this is how they were done already in an existing document that I'm editing. And I can kind of make a note of that. And okay, now when I make a document, I can use those markup characters. And a lot of times there's also like, okay, there's a page here somewhere on what is the markup characters, and just like kind of make a note of that and go back to it. I mean, really, that should be part of the default links on a wiki is, how does markup work? Just have a page that it goes to that gives examples, of what the underlying code looks like and what it looks like to people that are surfing the wiki. And wiki has a kind of a local history. It was developed by a gentleman in Portland, so he made the first wiki. That's WIKI, and I believe it means quick in some language. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of what it is. And yeah, of course, this is a good thing to have in an organization. As someone, it encourages people to document their processes and, news and devices and all this stuff. So yeah, it's a good, simple, it's one of the kind of the bedrock technologies, I think, of the web that's, good to be familiar with. So look up wiki and, practice some. There's a lot of free sites to work on wiki pages, although you have to pay to get, the full features, maybe more markup and the ability to make pages that you have to be logged in order to see and things like that. But yeah, and then we also have sort of the more general issue here with this compromise of this, as it is 18-year-old software. A lot of times, age of software can be a good thing. It means a lot of bugs have been worked out. But in this case, it was something that was added to the plugin structure. And there you go. If something has the ability to do plugins, then it probably has the ability for plugins to do bad things. That's been a problem for WordPress. The basic core code of this content management system is pretty solid. And there's lots of people building plugins, and most of them have really horrible security problems, or maybe even just are outright malicious. So, like, for example, WordPress.com is a fully managed WordPress installation, and they've pared down. It's like, okay, you can only use a few of these predetermined plugins that we are scouring and have determined are safe to use. And anything that's unsecure, you just can't use it. Can't use any plugin you want on the official kind of paid for content management system site. But it also exists as a free package that you can install anywhere you want, but then you have to pay for support, or you need to have your own people that know how to support it, and that can be problematic. And it's a huge portion of what's on the web. So, it's really a high profile attack surface. Whenever something is discovered that's a problem, usually again in plugins, then immediately they start scanning the net trying to find this thing. And they mentioned Shodan, which is a search engine for different responses that services give. So, you can put in the profile of how a given version of this Confluence wiki is, what plugins it's using maybe, and it will automatically go out there and detect it. And then they'll go, okay, here's a list of things that you can exploit. And then you can, go in and check and see if the default password is in there. It's a good researcher tool. And it's, as much as it can be used to exploit things, it also turns up the pressure on people not to try to do some security by obscurity. It's like, if your out-of-date code is going to be showing up on people's search lists for exploitable sites, then you got to take it seriously and say, okay, I gotta take this thing offline and or patch it, or I'm going to get someone hacking into my site. It's just going to happen. Even someone can automate the process. It's like, okay, here's a list, and go try all these sites and try to exploit them, and then, report back which ones you're able to exploit and which ones you've, made new accounts on and all this stuff. Okay, now just automatically go out to all those sites and install a botnet or, some other nastiness. So, yeah, these even scale, even if there's like millions of sites that have the same exploit, that's not really the hide-in-crowd protection you might expect it to be, because, you can automate detection and exploitation of issues like this. And you write that script once to do that, and then it goes off on its merry way and just generates all the problematic noise that, as if there were, millions of hackers out there. So, it's a very, very simple-minded hackers, mind you, but still going after that low-hanging fruit. So again, don't be the low-hanging fruit. And one way you can do that is, in general, anything that doesn't absolutely have to be available to the public, put some sort of hardened protection around it. Put it behind a firewall. Put it behind, if you need to use it from off-site, put it on a VPN where only people who have the ability to log into your local network from the public through encrypted credentials can even see the wiki installation. That's fair. All right, well, let's move on to the next clip. This is another Creative Commons clip from the good folks at twit.tv. This is This Week in Google 675, doing arbitrage on Amazon.
This is Twit.
Do you ever, and I feel like you might occasionally buy an occasional dum-dum lollipop. Do you?
Yes, I
yes,
do.
You do.
It's a simple pleasure.
I think it's a Southern brand, I want to say. I don't know. So here's a story from Bloomberg.
Mitch, done that in a while.
Bloomberg Business Week. Mitchell Owens recently discovered that mysterious entities were selling bulk orders of Dum Dum lollipops on Amazon for a couple of bucks less than the price charged by his company, Spangler Candy Company, which makes Dum Dums. So he placed an order from one of the Amazon merchants. A few days later, a 500-pack of lollipops arrived on his doorstep. They weren't counterfeit, and strangely had been shipped directly from Sam's Club. It's a get ready for this, a price arbitrage scheme, which is illegal according to Amazon. They don't want people, not illegal like you go to jail for
against the rules.
You go to Amazon jail for it.
Terms of service.
Sellers, often guided by how-to tutorials on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, scour the internet for products with lower prices than Amazon. Then they post the items on the website, wait for someone to place an order. Wait, they don't even buy it yet, right? No inventory. Purchase the product, drop ship directly to the customer, and take the difference. And they never actually touch the merchandise. It is a violation of Amazon policy, but because Amazon's so big, good luck.
Hard to notice.
Yeah. Here is.
I thought this hustle has been going on for a while, though, sir.
It has.
At least 5-6 years.
With Dum Dums, the sellers are leveraging a yawning price gap between Sam's Club, which sells a deeply discounted 500-pack of lollipops for about $15, and Amazon, where Spangler sells its exclusive 400-pack for $26. Sellers can charge $25 on Amazon to lure price-conscious shoppers and pocket about $6 after subtracting Amazon's fees.
It's arbitrage. If you go all the way down to line 151, one of my numbers.
Am I done talking about the lollipop drop shippers? Yes, I am, actually. Okay. I just wanted to say the words lollipop drop shippers. This is a Business Insider.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. This is a Business Insider article. I quit my job to buy and resell used books on Amazon. Now I use my 6-figure income to travel the world. For
so she goes to a used bookstore, she buys the books, she ships them to Amazon, and then the rest just happens. People buy it on Amazon, and Amazon ships it, and she gets her pennies, and she travels the world.
How can I do that?
I know. I think that's my retirement. I think that's what I'm going to do. So I don't want to sell any of the books I have. That's the problem.
So
Just
she's
don't sell your
traveling around the
pictures.
U.S. going to used bookstores. So it's
She
not
did
like,
that already.
She's not like going to Florence. She's going around the U.S.
No, she did that already. But once she did that and got enough books in Amazon's warehouse, she said, "See you later. I'm going to Turkey."
So I often will
Uses
buy.
that mailbox money.
I will often buy used books on Amazon. A lot of the programming books, especially the old ones I want to buy, that's the only way you can get them is used.
Right.
Most of the time, I think they come from a bookstore, but occasionally you get shipped and fulfilled by Amazon. That means that somebody like this woman has gone around, found these books. Amazon will store them for you for a fee, right? And ship them.
It's all for a fee, but what the hell? Plus, my local used bookstore doesn't list their inventory on Amazon or anywhere, and so there's someplace stuff that's really cheap. I just got for the magazine book. I went there and bought some old Life magazines. I have the Life Kennedy shot with Zapruder film issue for $2. I'm going to bet I can sell that for more on eBay.
Well, I have this fine picture of a handsome gentleman, former TV guide critic.
If somebody's going to buy, if some schmuck is going to buy even that.
Don't you think this probably was somebody's arbitrage? Come to think of it, like
It was an old. They bought a file of old press pictures.
exactly
Press releases. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're not traveling the world either.
based on the big bucks from selling Jeff Jarvis portraits.
Selling Jeff Jarvis. Yeah.
That would be kind of ironic. Yeah, I've been kind of aware of this whole idea of drop shipping for a long time because, and I think anybody who buys on Amazon has, because frequently you'll order something and it kind of like comes in this like beat up box, bubble wrapped,
Beaten up
like
box.
some guy bought it at Sam's Club and then threw it in a box and sent it to you.
Yep.
And it's just it's arbitrage. It's the difference between the price he paid for it and the price that I paid on Amazon. And I always figure when that happens, I'm just paying for the convenience, right? That because I didn't have to go to that Sam's Club to pick it up.
Right. Well, or you're finding things you just couldn't find otherwise.
But a lot of the stuff, you maybe I buy obscure stuff, but a lot of the stuff I order on Amazon is like that. It's just,
By the way, do you use Bookfinder?
yes. After you told us about
It's
it,
the best. Oh, I did. Okay, yeah, it's the best.
yeah. I have to remember that.
It's
though.
a meta search engine of all
Right.
the used book search engines, and it's spectacular.
Yeah. So let's see. I want to just see if Paul Graham. I spent like $60 for this book called On Lisp by Paul Graham because it's out of print. It's a very valuable book. This is it, On Lisp, used.
Oof, you got a good deal.
$82. I got a deal.
That's rare. You only find one book matching. That is really rare. That's shipped from Japan.
Shipped from Japan. That's probably why it's so expensive. Yeah, let me see if I can find it on Amazon. Actually, now that we're in this loop, we can edit this out too. In fact, let's just edit out most of the show. Jeez, 114.
114. Well,
Lisp-
tomorrow
Lisp
is a
expensive.
book sale.
Yeah.
The AAUW, the American Association of Women, University Women, book sale here nearby. And it's a middle school cafeteria that's filled. The first day costs more to get in because the people who go in are these people. And they have scanners and they go rushing around the place with the scanner and the phone, and they know the price and they know what to pick up, and they cherry pick the entire place. I've watched them in action and it's phenomenal. And they have lots of rules. If they find, let's say, an Oxford University Press book, those don't get discounted much. They pick those up. And they look around and I watch them with their, it's Grasshopper and the assistant coming, learning the tricks of the trade. And they leave with boxes and boxes and boxes of books, which in turn end up on Bookfinder.
But this is a good thing.
Yes, keeps them going.
This
People
is
get
even,
read.
but it's not even that. It's you might say, well, come on, people shouldn't be able to make money arbitraging book prices. No, this is smoothing out demand and supply. It's getting.
It's a
books
perfect
to
market of
it's
information.
A perfect market. It's exactly what it is.
Yes.
It's exactly how it should work. So I don't have a problem with that.
Because otherwise, it would have cost you at least $20 to buy that picture.
At least.
I think it only cost you 10.
At least.
Yeah.
No, these were cheap. Wait a minute. Oh, it was so expensive, Jeff. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. No, yeah.
And you're listening to Northwest Tech Show on KMUZ. That was a Creative Commons clip from the good folks at twit.tv. That was This Week in Google 675, talking about arbitrage on Amazon. So, again, of course, this is something that is against Amazon's terms of service. They really want to, control the market and make sure that they make the optimum profit, and they can play games with the prices. They can see, sell the same thing for different prices and see what happens. A lot of times the problem with Amazon, because, you have these individual sellers that are trying to sell things through Amazon, is that they get to see all of your numbers. They get to see exactly what you're selling at what price and to who, and, they're not supposed to. Their internal formal policy is not to do this, and yet they quite often come out with a Amazon version of this, the same product that is listed above the original thing that they're making a copy of. And, it isn't even necessarily cheaper. It may be lower quality. Some people come up with some kind of unique products to sell on Amazon, and boom, instantly there's a clone. Amazon is in the perfect position to do that, or I should say their employees are. And while they may be told not to do this, they're also given financial incentives for coming up with products that, Amazon can sell, and how much profit that makes. So they're really incentivizing the behavior that they say they don't want to do. So they get the best of both worlds. They get to say, oh, that's against our rules, and yet they get the money. So these are the kinds of opportunities that come and go. Security holes open, or rather, I should say, workflow exploitation happens. And then they say, okay, well, what is this, and can we change it, or do we need to change it? A lot of times, scams happen, and, the big players involved have no incentive to change it. Like, say, for example, YouTube and they have like the partner program where you can say, okay, this is my material, and anyone else selling this, or anyone else doing this video, just, shut them off, or give me their money from their monetization. And they've done things like someone claiming that they own Moonlight Sonata, just give it a different name, and anyone who plays Moonlight Sonata, they lose their ability to monetize, and all their, and ads start being run against their video that goes to the malicious partner that, claimed this copyright to a public domain work. That happens accidentally, but it happens on purpose a lot. And, say, okay, there's a trend. Okay, I'm going to do a version of that, and then I'm going to use my ability as a, special partner privilege to mess up the original seller. And that happens on Amazon as well. Like, I remember the Cliff Stoll, the guy who famously tracked down hackers early on in a book documented the Cuckoo's Egg, very fun book. And he's been into making these special glassware Klein bottles, kind of a physical implementation of a mathematical concept. And he's had people swoop in and essentially get rid of his listings or take over his listings and take over his reviews, and say, okay, this Klein bottle is them now. And, all the sales start going to the wrong place. There's lots of ways to exploit, a lot of these systems, they have some sort of mechanism, like the YouTube partnership program, which is supposedly there to stop copyright violations. And then, the criminal element figures out, okay, how can I exploit this mechanism, know it better, and use it against people that are, being honest. That have like a one-time pop hit, and they don't really know how to use YouTube, and they don't have any connections, and they're not a partner. And I'll just start monetizing views of, maybe thousands, millions of views of something that's completely unrelated to me. Or go on Amazon and say, okay, I know how to wreck the legitimate vendors in some way and take over. I know on eBay for a while, I haven't used it for a long time, but the big thing was sending people bricks instead of laptops. And one of the things they do is aggressively go after the actual laptop sales, people trying to sell laptops, and do all sorts of false complaints about them to drive them off the net, and therefore the only remaining listings, or a high percentage of them, were these fraudulent offers. And, then it was up to you to kind of prove that you didn't receive a laptop. It's like, well, the shipping company says that, you were shipped something, and it's just, we just have your word that it was a brick. All they have to do is say it wasn't a brick, and, it becomes a big thing. So, there's all these sorts of business ability to exploit people's business model, because one of the things about technology is it allows things to scale up to a level where humans aren't involved at the company that would be in the position to fix things. The amount of people that use YouTube versus number of YouTube employees, or the number of people who use Amazon versus the number of Amazon employees, means that it's virtually impossible to get to a human to resolve a complaint. And so all the complaint resolution systems have to be automated, and automated processes can be analyzed and their weak points found and be exploited. A lot of times they're just things that are very, very, very difficult to do without some sort of human judgment involved. You can make a process that works for everything that was going on last week, but then that field of criminals, they look at how you've changed things and figure out a way to exploit the new system. Come up with something you haven't seen, and making money all the time while the company and or the other vendors are playing catch up. There's things Amazon does where they commingle supposedly identical products when you're using, you're selling things through Amazon warehouses, where they just, they store the stuff and then they deliver it instantly for you, and it just kind of takes you out of the loop of constantly having to fill these orders. Well, if you've got a bunch of legit, say, DVDs, you got a bunch of legitimate DVDs, and someone else is selling supposedly the exact same thing, except they're selling counterfeit DVDs, they don't make any distinguishment between whose product is where. So, it's like you get a sale, a product from that pile is pulled and sent to the person, and it might be one of your legitimate ones, and it might be someone else's, the something that someone else submitted that was fraudulent. And you both just simply have a single number of, how many copies are in Amazon warehouse, and that's your only kind of connection to what you stored there. And sometimes they'll shut down an account, and they'll say, okay, well, we got a complaint that you're a bad guy or something, and so we're just going to turn off your account. And again, these high ratios between number of people trying to vend on the service versus number of employees means you're not going to get a human reviewing your case most of the time, unless it's such an outrage that you're able to get a reporter somewhere to pick it up as a story. And as soon as it's a lot of publicity, okay, now it goes to the top of the pile, and a human might deal with it, but otherwise not. And so you get your maybe it's like, as I just said, you got a complaint about counterfeit DVDs that weren't out of your pile, but they were credited to you because they were just part of a common pile. They say, okay, we're canceling your account, and we're going to keep all your product unless you pay us to get it back. So you pay to get the product in the first place, and then you have to pay again to recover it. And again, they'll just give you, okay, you have X number of this DVD, and so we're just going to randomly pull X number of that DVD from the pile, and if there's a whole bunch of counterfeits in there, you're not even getting the genuine items that you put in the first place. So these kind of automatic systems are easy to exploit, and enter arbitrage. And as was said there quite at the end, hey, this is a way of helping the market equalize. Maybe someone's selling something at a higher price because they've got kind of a captive customer, and by moving from market to market, you're able to kind of bring the prices that people find stuff in different markets into line, into something more consistent. And that changes, with the the less efficiency is built into the system, the greater the opportunities for arbitrage. You know, if you have to just like look at 1,000 things and before you find one that, you know, gives you a 1% advantage, that's not going to be great. But, you know, sometimes there's, oh, wow, there's a huge discount over at Sam's Club over what the company itself is charging for its product when it retails it. So I'll just buy out Sam's Club and arbitrage that sale through Amazon. And people try to do this with things like, you know, a lot of times different countries have different prices for the same luxury good. Like a Rolex watch, it might be sold in another country for a different price than it's sold in the U.S. And on, you know, kind of trademark and fraud kind of basis, the companies have been able to make it stick that, you know, you can't just go over to, you know, another continent, buy up a bunch of Rolexes cheap, and then bring them back on your own to the United States and start selling them. They've said that, well, that's, you know, crossing borders with retail is a problem. They can, you know, confiscate the shipments and stuff. And it's been a while since I looked at that, so I can't remember the details of it. But, you know, it's somewhat like, you know, hey, with drugs, you know, pharmaceuticals, you know, you can go buy a certain medication for $5 in Mexico that is sold in the United States for $200. And a lot of people, it's worth it while to travel to Mexico and, you know, buy a year's supply of their personal use of medications and save a whole bunch of money. But if you tried to resell that, then you get into trouble. So, I mean, just above and beyond the fact that, you know, it might be a controlled substance that only is available through a prescription. But, yeah, the companies, the best model for the companies is to sell to each customer at the highest price they're willing to pay. And so sell it cheap to the people that can only afford a low amount, as long as it's still above what your cost is to manufacture. And the ones that are willing to pay a lot for it, charge them a lot, you know, and these kind of geographical restrictions make that easier. And so, you know, I'm all for breaking those down and saying, hey, you know what, just make this come up with the price that when you sell it, you make the most money overall. Fine. You know, it's not optimal sometimes, because sometimes people are in a, you know, your money or your life kind of situation where they basically have to pay you any amount up to 100% of their salary, because, you know, they need your product to remain living, or, you know, or functioning, or not to go blind or whatever. So that's kind of a problem. But in other kinds of goods where it's not a matter of life and death, and where there's other people selling something that could be a substitute for your product, okay, make that as efficient as possible and sell at one price. I mean, I got to admit, I love the convenience of Amazon, but I don't want them to figure out, okay, what's the most that Dave will pay for this product, and then give me that price and give someone else a different price. That conceivably they could do. And arbitrage is one way around that kind of thing. And again, you know, someone like, you know, Sam's Club might do something as a loss leader, just trying to get people into the store. So they're not really super happy about people buying out all their product just to ship it to people that have no idea that they're dealing with Sam's Club until the box shows up and it's like, oh, shipped from Sam's Club, but it's come to me from business name that I thought I was buying from. So yeah, I guess it makes sense. I don't know if they talked about it too much, but there is a thing called showrooming that is kind of death to local business. And that's where you go down to your local store and you find a product, and then you look up the UPC code and you find it online for less and you buy it there. And yeah, I'm all for getting the lowest price, but at the same time, you have to consider the kind of the meta cost of you and a bunch of other people just pumping money out of the local community, right? You're earning your money locally, and then you're sending it off to Amazon headquarters, and where it's all being centralized and collected, and, you know, will not circulate in your community anymore. And that kind of hurts everyone. So as much as you can, you know, kind of do things backwards. Find stuff on Amazon and then try to find a local place that you can buy that same product from. If the price isn't too much different, hey, go for it. You're keeping money in the community. It's a good, responsible thing to do, thinking of others and, letting your local businesses survive. Because I'll tell you, once all the local businesses are driven out of business and Amazon is literally the only game in town, those prices are not going to be so low anymore. All right. Well, there was another topic I wanted to get into, not based on a clip. There's been big things brewing in Salem. I've been a long time fan of Makerspaces, and there's been a local effort to get things going, and I'll disclose I am part of that. I'm a board member of a local effort called Spark Studio Salem, and we recently got a physical space. We had many challenges from for the years, from shooting too high and trying to get a space that was too big to support the demand. And then we had pandemic, and it wasn't really the ideal time to get a physical space for people to meet. We had kind of a perfect opportunity of a lot of the, checked a lot of the boxes of a space we were looking for, and we went for it. And so we followed I should get into what is a makerspace. Why did this fascinate me so much? So Makerspaces started in Europe, and they were places that people with different expertises and different tools, or maybe the space-owned tools, that people could come to and work on projects. It's like, okay, and you have all these specialty projects like a vacuum former or something like that, and you don't need it very often, but when you do need it, it makes things incredibly easy. Or a laser cutter is one of the big ones, or 3D printers, or milling machines, or a whole bunch of sorts of things. And so it's like, okay, well, let's kind of come together and create a space that we can have the room and the gear to work on projects that wouldn't be practical in our home garage, and frankly wouldn't be as fun because you don't have other people around to be curious about what your work is and to tap their brains for help on things. So this came over to the States in the early 2000s, and it was supported by the government in Europe, but here it was not. So there were just a few nationally at first. There was like I believe Noisebridge in the Bay Area, and there was NYC Resistor in New York City. And when I started really looking into this, and you've seen maker fairs and stuff, those kinds of tend to be the same kind of people putting these things on, and Make Magazine and all that. And in the 2010-ish era, I was looking around, and several makerspaces had opened up in Seattle, and I had friends that lived up there. So, I combined a visit with I'll go on a makerspace tour. And I was doing a community TV show here in Salem at the time, and so I was able to take the footage of that and put it online. But I often refer to that as kind of a Goldilocks and the Three Bears kind of situation, because I went up there and I found one place that was very, very earthy, just very practical space. They had like some circular saws, they had some reference books, they had boxes full of yarn and stuff, and it was just it's kind of a place to come and work on projects that you would work on home, just in the presence of other people. And that one was called Jigsaw Renaissance, and they did have one innovation I thought was pretty fun, which was that they just had a couple of people with keys to the space, the ones that were kind of the organizers. And, you didn't want to hand out a bunch of keys because you can't cancel a key. Or if every time someone leaves and you don't want them getting into the space anymore, you have to rekey the lock and then issue a bunch of new keys. It's a big hassle. So what they did was they had their light switch rigged to a microcontroller that would post some pre-programmed text onto Twitter based on whether the light switch was turned up or turned down. So every time you turned on the light switch, which presumably someone, they access the space and the first thing they do is turn the light switch on, it would say, Jigsaw Renaissance is occupied. Call in if you want to come visit and see who's there and how long they're going to be there. Okay. When you'd go out, you turn off the light switch, it'd say, Jigsaw Renaissance is now closed. So that was a good way to kind of just automatically communicate to everyone the times when they could show up or not. And the next space I went to was Metrics Create Space, which was somewhat polished. I mean, it was a little edgy here and there, but mostly it was polished. The most low rent thing about it is there were broken 3D printers everywhere. But, they had indirect lighting. They had a vending machine with microcontrollers and cables and other things that makers might want. They had a giant bench that people could sit at and work on their computers. They had a guy in a lab coat that, if someone just walks in off the street and says, hey, I have something I want to make a laser cut pattern on wood, or, I want to 3D print this object that I've got a shape file for on this flash drive. And there was someone there that, could take their money and do that as just kind of a service to the public. It's like, okay, well, it's interesting, very businessy, but fun. And then there was one space I was having a hard time getting in touch with them. And then just, the night before my last night in town, I was going to leave early in the morning. And, about like 10:30 at night or something, I finally got a response to the email I'd sent out earlier saying, hey, if you're still interested in visiting the space, I'm going over there now, and, I could pick you up. And it's like, okay, let's do it. So, 10:30 at night, I'm running around through Seattle down to the area near a giant airfield. I think it was a Boeing-related thing. And the first thing I see is kind of in the alley out in front of the space, there's this pool of water and some sort of water pump and a series of valve people are changing and fitting onto this thing. And they're trying to get a laminar flow of water to arc over the building. And laminar flow means, if you've seen water that's coming smoothly out of a faucet, it isn't splashing at all. Like the surface tension of the water is strong enough relative to the chaos of the water flow that it actually just contains it and it all stays smooth. And a lot of time, like a lot of displays that feature water streams and things and LEDs being shown through the water. A lot of times those are laminar flow. Very little splashing going on. Maybe just when it initially starts up, but generally all the water is moving at the same speed in the same direction, and so there's not enough disturbance, and it's being handled smoothly enough that it just goes through. And water jet cutters use laminar flow. You just see this little beam of water, and it's flowing so fast that it's just like eroding things very quickly on contact. But if nothing was in front of it, it'd just be this smooth pillar of water. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out how to shoot that over the building. And then I step inside, and the first thing I see is this little kind of opaque white crystal tree branches that like splits into more. Like, what's that? It's like, well, we took a Tesla coil, it throws off sparks and stuff. We just did one pulse. We had the thing immersed in like a salt solution or something, sufficient that when you fired up this coil with a pulse, and essentially you had this lightning pattern that you would normally see through the air, it would go through this medium, and it would cook the medium solid wherever the electricity flowed. And so you just give it this pulse, and then haul it out and let all the other material fall away, and boom, here's this crystalline tree. It's like, okay, that's wild. And they go in the main area, and it was just like this black disc standing on edge on the table. I was like, well, what's going on with that? it's pretty striking looking. Oh, that's the forward-looking infrared scanner off of a Russian attack helicopter. And I was just like, wow, okay, this is a fun place. So there's all sorts of range of creativity. And in more recent times, in 2011, Eugene opened a makerspace, Eugene Makerspace, and I can't remember, but somewhere in that time frame, Control H opened a makerspace in Portland. And they both had really interesting stories. One, the Portland one was a little harder to copy because they essentially had a fortuitous meeting with, they wanted to start a makerspace and encountered someone who had previously bought a mini mall with the intent of creating a makerspace, but he never had the people for it. So it was like, oh, okay, people meet money that's willing to do this. Fine. Eugene Makerspace had sort of a model that was a little more copyable, and which was sort of how the local makerspace finally did get a space for Spark Studio Salem. So what Eugene Makerspace did is they got 10 people together that really wanted this to happen and said, okay, well, how much do we want to, and these things are generally funded through a combination of memberships that have access to the place most of the time, and then they'll have open houses occasionally to find new members and to also kind of engage with the public and projects they work on for the public. And you have classes that can be offered, and you have grants. And so what Eugene did is said, okay, well, what is the price that we want people to be able to, something that's affordable, because these are nonprofits usually, and what's a price people can afford but will cover our expenses? And they figure out what that price was. And it's like, at how many people would we have to have for that to work? Okay, it's some number that's like way higher than you're going to start with. Okay, so what we will do as the first 10 people in is, between us, how much can we raise to and support for 6 months or a year? And they commit to doing that, and every time someone comes in additional, that they charge them the quote unquote normal rate, and this leftover expense that needs to be covered by the original 10 people goes down a little bit. And you do that over and over and over again, and a year passes, and then you say, okay, how's this going? How much are we paying now? Can we do this for another 6 months or another year? And continue until the thing is self-supporting. And Eugene Makerspace started in 2011. That was their model, and that worked good for them. And that's pretty close to what we wound up doing here. So for them, their mission there was a community workshop with shared space and tools, had an active community of creatives and creators from all walks of life. Experiments abound. Interests and focus can range wildly depending on who's at the shop at a given time. Doing things like circuit bending, experimental music, digital art, laser cutting, 3D printing, CNC machining, cosplay, building retro arcade machines, pumpkin launchers, battling robots, or just fixing a broken chair. So also a little callback to the concept of repair fairs. So that might be something that a makerspace might engage in, where they have like a day and say, okay, we're fixing speakers. We got a guy that knows how to reline speakers and fix all the most common ailments with them, to take these really great old speakers that worked wonderfully, but just had a couple of parts that wear out, and instead of just throwing stuff away and getting something cheap, just fix the thing that works. It's a good way to go. So anyway, Salem does finally have something local in process. It's just been open for a couple of days, so it's still in the formative big empty room and what should we put here kind of stage. But if you want to check out the progress of that, sparkstudiosalem.com is a blog of the continuing adventures. And again, that's an organization I'm a part of, so just wanted to disclose that. And with that, you've done it again. You spent an hour talking about technology and how a better understanding can lead to better outcomes at home, at work, and in your civic engagement. I hope you'll join us to continue these conversations next week and every week, Wednesdays at noon, for Northwest Tech Show.